Before we get into the real meat of this guide, let me start with a hook worthy of our community. When we study World War II fieldcraft, we're not just learning about the past. We're learning how people, ordinary young men thrown into extraordinary situations, pushed human ingenuity to its limit. Now, before we go further, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear isn't the usual recycled survival trivia. These are refined, battlefield-tested shelter hacks pulled from the experiences of soldiers who had to stay alive through winter sieges, monsoon seasons, and landscapes turned into oceans of mud. And for those of us who respect history at a serious level, these insights matter. Not simply because they're clever, but because they still work. The next few minutes will give you practical, transferable techniques, and by the end, you'll be able to trace a direct line from World War II trenches to your own backcountry or emergency preparedness strategies. Now, let's get into the first hack and build this guide properly. The first genius hack is how soldiers created heat-retaining snow shelters by shaping rather than digging. On the Eastern Front, men quickly discovered that carving blocks out of compact snow wasted time and energy. Instead, they piled snow into a mound, let it sinter, basically set into a harder crust, and then hollowed the centre from the inside. This method required less strength, kept the outer shell windproof, and created a dome that resisted collapse under heavy snowfall. It's the same principle you'd use today if you were stuck in alpine terrain without tools. Build the mound first, let it settle for at least an hour, then carve a cavity just large enough to lie down in. The smaller the space, the warmer it stays. The second hack involves the clever use of roofing layers to beat endless rain. In the Italian campaign and the Pacific Islands, soldiers realized single-layer tarps failed during long storms, so they created double roofs with an air gap. Water hit the first layer, shed downward, and whatever penetrated ended up evaporating or dripping before it reached the second layer. To apply this today, stretch your first tarp tight and your second tarp slightly looser beneath it with at least a fist's width of space. Soldiers often used branches or captured tent poles to maintain that gap. It's a simple principle. 2 thin shields outperform 1 thick one. The third hack centers on trench dugouts reinforced with scavenged materials. Troops on both sides learn that mud will betray even the best dug shelter unless it has ribs and a crown. They would press branches, ammo crate boards, or even broken doors along the sides of dugouts to prevent collapse. Then they placed a curved roof, logs, metal scrap, or planks across the top to create an arch. An arch distributes weight and stops wet ground from caving in. If you ever need emergency protection in saturated soil, think arch first, then cover it with earth. The structure stays intact far longer than a simple flat roof. The fourth hack is using body heat and ground insulation intelligently. WWII soldiers knew that the ground, especially wet or frozen ground, was the biggest thief of warmth. They stacked pine boughs, straw, cloth, or even paper rations packaging to create at least a hand's thickness of separation from the earth. You can test this yourself. Lie on cold soil for 2 minutes, then lie on 2 inches of dry plant material. The difference is dramatic. Soldiers never wasted that barrier, and if you're in the wild, it should be one of the first things you build. The fifth hack involves turning ponchos into miniature lean-tos in areas where digging was impossible. In many urban ruins, Stalingrad, Warsaw, Manila, soldiers had no open earth to work with. They fastened poncho corners to debris, crates or bent rebar to create angled shelters that shed rain and concealed heat signatures. The strength of this design is in the angle. A steeper angle sheds wind and water better, and a narrower footprint traps warmth. If you have only a tarp and cordage today, find 2 anchor points and pull one corner high while keeping the opposite corner low. It's primitive, but it works in a pinch, just as it worked in shattered cities 8 decades ago. The sixth hack is the use of reflective heat walls. In snowy forests, soldiers often built small fires next to half-walls of logs or stones. These weren't windbreaks, they were reflectors. The fire threw heat toward the shelter entrance and warmed the interior without needing a large flame. To copy this today, build your fire a meter from a reflector wall and angle your shelter so the heat bounces inside. This was common among Finnish troops, who mastered cold-weather fieldcraft better than almost anyone of the era. The seventh hack concerns drainage trenches, a real lifesaver in muddy campaigns. Soldiers discovered that digging just a wrist-deep trench around a tent or shelter perimeter dramatically redirected water. It might seem simple, but even a 1-inch trench can actually prevent flooding in heavy rain. The trick is to carve a deliberate channel that leads downhill and away from where you sleep. Many veterans credited this shaping of terrain with saving gear and, honestly, lives during monsoon seasons. The eighth hack is the rapid-dry clothing racks built over small smokeless fires. Troops in Russia and the Ardennes hung wet socks and gloves above embers without producing flames that could draw attention. They placed 2 green branches over the coals and rotated items slowly to dry them evenly. If you ever need to dry gear discreetly, this low-heat method prevents scorching and reduces visible smoke. The ninth and final hack is how soldiers extended shelter warmth using hot stones. They heated fist-sized stones in a fire, wrapped them in spare cloth, and kept them inside shelters through the night. It wasn't enough to heat the whole space, but it really took the edge off freezing temperatures. You can replicate this in the field with smooth stones that won't crack under heat. Warm them gradually, wrap them, and place them near your core or feet. These 9 shelter techniques were born from some of the harshest conditions in human history, yet they remain practical and effective even today. If you found value in this guide and want more real, deeply researched survival history, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and help keep this legacy of knowledge alive.